If you've been through an IVF transfer, maybe once, maybe multiple times, and it hasn't worked, I want you to hear something that I say to every woman who comes to me after a failed cycle. IVF failing doesn't mean your body failed. It often means something specific was missed. And today, we're going to talk about two of the most commonly missed root causes I see in women who've gone through failed transfer cycles: estrogen dominance and endometriosis. These two conditions are deeply connected. They're driven by the same underlying hormonal and inflammatory patterns, and they are under-tested, especially in the context of IVF preparation. Hi, I'm Dr. Marc Sklar, the fertility expert. For over 24 years, I've been helping women understand why their fertility journey isn't going the way it should and create a real plan to change that. And I've seen this pattern more times than I can count. A woman goes through IVF, the embryos look good, the transfer happens, and nothing. No one stops to ask why. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what estrogen dominance actually is, why it matters so much for implantation, how it connects to endometriosis, and the specific hidden tests that I use in the HOPE program to find what's being missed. And throughout this video, I'll be sharing real stories from women in my program who had all of these things overlooked until they weren't. Stay with me through this whole video, because if any of this sounds familiar, what you'll learn here could completely change your next steps. But before we go any further, I want to give you something. I put together a free guide called The Proven 6 Ways to Improve Egg Quality in 90 Days. Whether you're preparing for IVF, trying naturally, or thinking about what comes next, egg quality is foundational. And this guide covers exactly what I recommend to the women that I work with. Go to the comment section below to get the link. It's completely free. All right, let's get into it. I want to start with something that I think a lot of women in the IVF world don't get clear enough. When an IVF transfer fails, especially more than once, the instinct of most clinics is to adjust the protocol, try a different medication, or recommend another cycle. And sometimes that's the right call, but often the real question isn't how to run the next cycle better. It's why isn't the embryo implanting in the first place? Because here's the thing, a lot of the women that I work with have good embryos, sometimes genetically tested normal embryos, and they still can't hold a pregnancy. And when I look at their history, I consistently see the same patterns being missed. The uterine environment wasn't addressed. The hormonal foundation wasn't evaluated fully. The inflammatory picture was never investigated. And that brings us to two of the most significant and most overlooked contributors to implantation failure and IVF failure that I see in my practice: estrogen dominance and endometriosis. These two conditions are not rare. Endometriosis affects an estimated 1 in 10 women of reproductive age, and the majority of them don't know they have it because it can be completely silent. No obvious pain, no dramatic symptoms, just repeated failed cycles or recurrent loss and no answers. And this estimate may be even higher because so many women go through their life not ever being diagnosed because they didn't know they had it. Estrogen dominance, where estrogen is too high relative to progesterone, or where estrogen is metabolized through problematic pathways, is something that I see in a significant percentage of women who come to me. It creates an environment that actively works against implantation, and it is almost never tested properly in the conventional fertility workup. So if you've been through IVF and it hasn't worked and nobody has looked at either of these things in depth, this video is specifically for you, because you deserve to know whether this is part of your story. And there are specific tests that can tell us what is going on. I want to walk you through 4 areas of investigation that are routinely skipped, and the specific tests that I use in the HOPE program to find what's really going on. The first thing I want to talk about is what's called estrogen dominance and why a standard estrogen blood test doesn't come close to telling you the full story. Estrogen dominance happens when there's too much estrogen relative to progesterone. I mentioned that before. Or when your body metabolizes estrogen through pathways that create more inflammatory and disruptive byproducts. This matters enormously for fertility because progesterone is what prepares your uterine lining to receive and hold an embryo. If estrogen is running too high or too wild and progesterone can't keep up with it, that delicate implantation window becomes compromised. The problem with a standard blood test is that it checks only one estrogen number at one moment in time. It doesn't tell you how your body is actually processing and eliminating estrogen. It doesn't tell you whether you're converting it through healthy pathways or problematic ones. And it doesn't tell you how estrogen and progesterone are actually interacting across your whole cycle. It's just a snapshot. What I use for this in the HOPE program is the Dutch test, dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. It maps your full hormone picture, including how your body metabolizes estrogen day to day. It shows us whether excess estrogen is being broken down safely or recirculating and building up, driving inflammation, disrupting the uterine lining, and making implantation harder. I think about a member I worked on who was certain she had estrogen dominance. She had been self-diagnosing herself for months based on her symptoms: heavy periods, mood swings, stubborn weight. But when we ran the Dutch test, the picture was more nuanced than she had expected. Her estrogen wasn't dramatically elevated, but her metabolism of estrogen was going through the problematic pathway, and her progesterone was not where it needed to be either. That specific finding completely changed the approach we took with her protocol. And in her words, once she had the actual data, the guessing stopped. She didn't have to wonder anymore. She had a real answer and a real plan to address that finding. So why would something like this matter on your fertility journey? If you had failed transfers with good embryos, estrogen metabolism could be a significant piece of that puzzle. And it's a piece that is almost never checked in conventional IVF workups. What you can do right now is start supporting your liver. It's responsible for breaking down and clearing excess estrogen. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale, lightly steamed, support this process. Flax seeds support estrogen clearance through a different pathway. Reducing alcohol, processed foods, and environmental estrogen exposures like plastics will all reduce the hormonal burden on your body. But the most important step is getting the right testing so you know exactly what you're working with, how to address it. The second area is one that I can't overstate the importance of, especially for women who've been through failed IVF. It's testing for the inflammatory and immune markers that can reveal silent endometriosis. Endometriosis is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions in reproductive medicine. It takes, on average, 7 to 10 years to get diagnosed with it. And the reason for that is just simple. It doesn't always cause the obvious pain people associate with it. It doesn't always show up on ultrasound. And a definitive diagnosis requires surgery, which isn't recommended unless there's already a strong clinical suspicion. So what happens? Women go through IVF. The embryos look good. The transfer fails. And no one asks whether endometriosis might be creating an inflammatory uterine environment that's working against implantation. I want to tell you about one of my members. She had perfect AMH, regular ovulation, clockwork cycles. On paper, everything looked fine, but I ran a specific inflammatory marker as part of our comprehensive testing. It came back elevated. That result alone wasn't definitive, but it told me we needed to dig deeper. She pushed for a biopsy, stage 3 endometriosis. She had 0 symptoms. No one had ever suspected it. Once we knew it, everything changed. We coordinated with a specialist for excision surgery. At the same time, we addressed the underlying inflammation through the program, gut health, anti-inflammatory nutrition, immune support. 2 months after surgery, she was pregnant naturally. And then there's Sandrine, a member who came to me after 3 miscarriages and 3 failed IVF cycles. She had been diagnosed with both endometriosis and antiphospholipid syndrome before her IVF cycles. But the approach had been to proceed with IVF rather than truly address what those conditions were doing to her body's ability to hold a pregnancy. After 3 failed cycles, one of the best clinics in Switzerland told her there was nothing more Western medicine can do. Her options, they said, were adoption or egg donation, which, by the way, egg donation does not fix these issues either. She found the HOPE program. What we did was not complicated, but it was different. We worked on the inflammation driving her endometriosis. We supported her immune system. We gave her body a real foundation that IVF protocols alone had never built. She got pregnant naturally. 9 months later, she was pregnant again. She now has 2 children. So why would this matter on your fertility journey? Endometriosis creates an inflammatory environment that interferes with implantation, embryo development, and early pregnancy. If you have it, even silently, IVF alone is not addressing the root issue. The embryo is being placed into a hostile environment. And until you address the environment, you'll keep getting the same result. So what can you do about it right now? Focus on reducing systemic inflammation, an anti-inflammatory diet, reducing processed foods, refined sugar, and conventional dairy if you're sensitive to it. This is the foundation. Omega-3 fatty acids from wild-caught fish actively reduce inflammatory load. And if you've had failed transfers with no clear reason, ask specifically about inflammatory marker testing and whether endometriosis has been properly ruled out, not just assumed away. The third hidden test surprises a lot of women because most of them think they've already had their progesterone checked. And technically, they have. The problem is how it was checked. Most clinics check progesterone once, typically around day 21 of a 28-day cycle. If it's above a certain number, they say it looks fine and move on. But that single snapshot doesn't tell you how long progesterone is sustained across your luteal phase. It doesn't tell you whether it drops off too quickly. It doesn't tell you whether your luteal phase is actually long enough to support implantation and early pregnancy development. I see this all the time. A woman has a day 21 progesterone that checks out on paper. But when we look at her full cycle through the Dutch test or through detailed BBT tracking, we see a progesterone that peaks and then crashes within days, or a luteal phase that's really only 8 or 9 days, when we really need 12 to 14 days for a fertilized egg to implant properly and begin developing. One of my members had a 28-day cycle. Perfect. Her day 21 progesterone looked normal to her OB. But when we looked deeper, she was ovulating on day 20, not 14. That meant her luteal phase was only 8 days. In 8 days, implantation simply can't complete. This wasn't reflected anywhere in her standard testing. We addressed it, lengthened her luteal phase, and she got pregnant. If you're doing IVF, progesterone support after transfer is critical, and not all clinics monitor it closely enough after the initial prescription. If you're trying naturally, a short luteal phase is a fixable problem, but only if you know it exists. I want you to start tracking your basal body temperature if you aren't already. It will show you your luteal phase length, whether your temps stay elevated, and when they drop. That information is free. It's yours, and it tells a story that no single blood draw can actually capture. And the fourth area connects directly back to Sandrine's story: immune and clotting function. Sandrine had antiphospholipid syndrome, a condition where the immune system produces antibodies that can interfere with blood supply to a developing embryo and cause recurrent pregnancy loss. She was diagnosed before her IVF cycles. But as I said before, the approach was to proceed with IVF without fully addressing what that immune condition was doing to her ability to sustain a pregnancy. Antiphospholipid syndrome is one specific immune condition, but there are others. Natural killer cell dysregulation, implantation-related immune markers, and other clotting factors can all contribute to failed transfers and recurrent loss. And these are not part of a standard fertility workup. I had another member. She came to me after multiple failed embryo transfers, all with genetically tested normal embryos. She worked in healthcare herself and had been advocating hard for more testing. Her doctors kept telling her things were normal. When we finally ran a specific protein marker associated with endometriosis, it came back highly elevated in a woman with 0 symptoms. She pushed for laparoscopy, stage 3 endometriosis. Her doctors were genuinely surprised. So after excision surgery, another transfer, her most successful pregnancy to that point, though it ultimately ended in a miscarriage as well. but with the combination of addressing the endometriosis, the inflammation, the immune environment, and continuing the full HOPE program protocol, she kept moving forward because now she had real information. And real information leads to a real plan. If you've had multiple failed transfers with genetically normal embryos and no one has run immune or clotting panels, that is a gap in your investigation. It doesn't mean everyone has an immune issue, but if you've had recurrent loss or repeated implantation failure, it does deserve to be looked at. Ask your fertility specialist specifically about immune and clotting panels. Bring it up directly and simultaneously work on immune regulation through the foundations, anti-inflammatory nutrition, gut health, sleep, and stress management, because a chronically inflamed body is not an immune system imbalance. So let me ask you something. Look at these 4 areas: estrogen metabolism, hidden endometriosis and inflammation, full cycle progesterone, and immune and clotting function. Which of these has actually been properly investigated in your case? I'd be willing to bet at least one of them hasn't been. And that is not your fault. The conventional fertility system is not built to go this deep, but you deserve for someone to go this deep. That is exactly what we do in the HOPE program. And it's why the women who come to me after years of failed cycles finally start to get answers. So let me tell you how we approach this, because what I'm describing isn't just information. It's a system, the HOPE system. When women come into the program, we start with step 1. Assessment. This means actually investigating. We look at your entire body, hormones, immune system, gut, thyroid, inflammatory markers, your full history. We run comprehensive testing. And for those with multiple failed transfers or recurrent loss, that includes everything we talked about today, and not just the standard fertility panel. And we put all of it together to build a real picture of what's driving your specific challenges. Then step 2, your personalized plan. Based on what we find, we build a protocol specific to you, your supplements, your anti-inflammatory nutrition protocol, your lifestyle adjustments, your targeted support for whatever root causes we've uncovered. Not a one-size-fits-all approach, yours. Step 3, support and accountability. Because having a plan is just the beginning. You need someone in your corner reviewing your progress, adjusting your protocol when things shift, and making sure you're not doing this alone. That's what our weekly group calls, our coaching team, and our community are for. This is what made the difference for Sandrine, for the women with silent endometriosis that no one had caught, for the members who came in after failed IVF cycles with beautiful embryos and no answers. When you actually investigate, when you run the right tests and build a plan around what you find, the path forward becomes clear. If you've been through IVF failure, I want you to know something. That experience does not define what's possible for you. It defines what hasn't been found yet. Estrogen dominance, silent endometriosis, progesterone that drops too soon, an immune system that was never properly evaluated. These are not unfixable problems. They are solvable when you find them, when someone actually looks. Your body is not broken. It's communicating. And the question is whether you have someone around you who knows how to listen and who cares enough to dig deeper than the standard checklist. You deserve real answers. You deserve a real plan. And you deserve a team that is invested in getting you there. If you really want to get pregnant and have me on your side as your fertility coach, I want to invite you to take the next step. Click the link below to apply for a free call with my team. This is a real one-on-one conversation where we will go through your full case, your history, your cycles, your labs, your IVF journey, and map out a clear, natural plan for moving forward. It's an opportunity to have me as your coach. Spots are limited because there are only so many hours in a day, so please don't wait. If you're serious about getting real answers, now is the time. Apply today. Let's figure this out together, and let's make your dream of motherhood a reality. Before you go, I want to point you to the next video that you should watch. If what I shared today about IVF failure and hidden root causes connected with you, the next video you need to watch is low AMH, 5 IVF alternatives you need to know about. Because if IVF hasn't been working, or if you want to prepare your body differently before trying again, that video lays out 5 real evidence-based alternatives that I work with every single day. It pairs perfectly with what we covered here today. I'll leave the link right here for you. Go watch it now and keep moving forward, because every step you take toward understanding your body is a step closer to the pregnancy you're working for. Until the next video, stay fertile and stay hopeful.